Good afternoon, gardening friends. It is now March 3rd at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Yesterday I had actually recorded something towards the end of that episode 7 where I said it was the 3rd. Actually it was the 2nd yesterday. So anyway, we got our sun back and things are looking pretty good. And let me just kind of show you around, show you what I found this morning. In short, the plants that were still exposed during the rain, those have gotten a little bit bigger. The ones that were still protected, well, let's just show you. And this is the pepper planter, the medium-sized planter. Nothing's germinated here yet. That was all covered with plastic. Although on the other end of the patio where I've got the tomatoes, the seeds planted, I don't have any sprouts there either, and they were not covered up. So it's taking a little while for them to germinate. They've had, I think, more than a week now, but we'll see what happens. And so here's the curve, and that was covered up in plastic, so it basically thought it was nighttime for the last 3 or 4 days. Not a whole lot. There's a couple of tiny little sprouts in one of them, but we'll just keep watching it. Being covered with plastic, it was very dry when I came out this morning, so I went ahead and watered it. And that's the curve. Moving on. Now here's something that might become a little bit of a problem. I can't really get you a great shot right now, but the squash is actually growing over the edge of the planter and working its way down. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to have to clear stuff off the table and get ready for it. I suppose if it does get down to the table, then the table can support the weight of the actual fruits, because there is one on there, although it's turning yellow, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to turn yellow and then back to green, or if there's something wrong with it, but we'll just keep watching that and see what happens. Out in the courtyard, the plants on the wall seem to have fared well, despite the fact that the rain was just pounding the surface of the soil. I guess there's enough vegetation in the ones in the middle to protect, to splash off some of the rain before it gets to the soil, but the ones on the outside, the wooden boxes, those I was a little more concerned about. Seems like the soil level is a little lower, but survived. I'm happy. I realize this is in shadow, but hopefully you can kind of see. There's no real change in these pots. They don't generally get a lot of sun, and with the rain they didn't get much more. But they're also under the protection excuse me, of some of the overhangs, so they didn't tend to get too wet either. So they basically, I think, just continue to grow, and every time the sun came out in the middle of that craziness, they got a dose of sun, so they're doing okay. Same goes for all the 20-gallon planters, and I covered a little bit of that towards the end of last episode, so we're doing good there. Here in the north courtyard, they also kind of got pounded, although there's some trees up above that actually will help soften the rain, and you might be able to see it looks like we've got a morning glory growing on the left side of the planter there, so these have survived. So everything basically has survived. I took some measures and protected the garden, and we're in good shape. So this week, instead of watching the rain, we're going to watch the plants grow. Good morning, gardening friends. I made a few little mistakes yesterday, so we'll pick up where I screwed up yesterday, but it's about 1:45. It's actually a little foggy today, but hopefully you can see that our number 1 is still up there. And let's see what else. So I forgot to mention it's March 4th at about 11:45. And I wanted to show you what the pipes look like up there and tell you a little bit about what all ended up happening. Thankfully, no massive structure damage. There's one guy up the street there in that evacuation zone whose house got hit the hardest. What I thought was like a foot deep of mud in his backyard turned out to be more like 10 feet in some areas. But the really nice thing on the news a couple of nights ago, right after the rain stopped, the mayor of the city was up there along with a number of residents and some firefighters, and they're all helping him dig out, and that's absolutely wonderful. He's still looking at quite a bit of repair work and what have you, but his house didn't, apparently there's a crack in the foundation or something, but his house is basically okay. Got yellow tag. I think it just means that as long as he gets the repairs done, he'll be okay. So no loss of life, no major loss of property. We're all good. Actually, I just saw these guys pull up. They're from the county, and I think they're actually helping out with getting that mud cleared. I don't know from his house or just from the streets around and other general areas, but it's nice to see the whole community come together. Now, getting back to the gardening, I came out this morning and found a nice little surprise. I was going to look at whether or not some of the plants actually needed water after so much rain, and these were kind of drying out, but I was really pleasantly surprised by just how many sprouts there are in here. I can see the morning glories in there. I can see something right in the middle, actually a couple things in the middle, which could be the moonflower just starting. There's other things in there, I detailed it earlier, but it's just really nice to see sprouts starting to come up. And I saw one other thing. Now this next shot's going to be tricky to get, so I'm just going to show you without commentary the other surprise I found. Nothing new on the patio since yesterday. So I'll wrap it up here for today's update, and we'll see what grows in the next couple of days. Good morning, gardening friends. It is now, let's see, March 7th at about 10:40 in the morning. And I wanted to show you, just give you an update on how things are looking. As you can see, that pot up top there is doing really nicely, and the more I look at it, the more I'm thinking that that's Swiss chard in the back, which I think I just threw in there for color at one point. But you can see a lot of the seeds are popping. If you look over to the left, you can see a bunch of tiny little sprouts coming up in the circular planters there. Everything is doing pretty nicely around here. Let's take a look around. That one hanging planter behind the pool shed, the nasturtium, is popped up over the top now. It's very visible. There's another one that's also visible, so those seeds are germinating a lot faster than I kind of anticipated. It may have something to do, if you look real carefully, you can see I got two hooks up there. So I actually moved some of these planters out front by 9 to 12 inches. So they may be getting, even though I did some sun tracking to see how much sun each of the planters is getting, these are not actually getting direct sun, but apparently they're okay with indirect sun. There's not a lot of new news on the patio. The sprouts that had sprouted are getting bigger. I'm not seeing a whole lot more new sprouts, but we just keep watering and watching. The yellow pear tomato off in the distance, it produced a fruit. It looks really sickly. I'm not even going to bother with it. I may cut off that particular stalk of the plant and reduce it way down, but ultimately I decided to plant seeds yesterday. I put a half a dozen in that planter, 4 in the corners and a couple towards the middle. So we'll watch those and see what happens. The 20-gallon planters are doing okay. Not a lot of new sprouts. There's a couple. I'll just sort of focus on this one for the moment. I'm looking at the others as I record this. There's not, like I said, not a lot of new stuff going on with those. With this one, interestingly enough, the plant growing to the left of the original artichoke plant looks like it's actually going to be an offshoot of that plant. It looks very, very similar, so I don't think it's a weed. I think it's actually the same thing, but it looks a lot healthier than the original. So we'll watch it and see what happens with that. Meanwhile, the petunias are doing nicely. Just as long as I keep giving these some TLC, they're doing nicely. There's not a whole lot else worth mentioning. Like I said, it's basically springtime and we're watching the plants grow. But I do like the color on these plants here, so I kind of figured I'd wrap up today with this, and I'm going to see about shooting another instructional demo, whatever you want to call it, video, and I'll probably post that before too long. That's it for today. Good morning, gardening friends. It's now Saturday, March 8th, at about 11:30. And there's not a whole lot more changes going on, so I think I'm going to wrap up this episode. Just wanted to show you kind of how the squash are doing. I think I forgot to mention during the week I did pick a couple of the radishes, and actually I can see one right back here. It looks like it's actually popping itself out, so I may pull that one and enjoy it. And then I'll have to plant a couple of radish seeds, but that's pretty much it there. But the really good news is that I finally have one tiny little sprout in the tomato planter. These are the Hard Rock tomatoes. So I got my first sprout from the seeds I ordered online, and I'm just looking forward to see more things sprout. Nothing from the peppers yet, but I got that. And that's pretty much it. So until the next episode, have a great day.